Dan and Amy. So, Amy, Donald Trump's still talking about Iowa.
Yeah, he wants a do-over.
Yeah, he said Ted Cruz stole the election, illegally stole it, which is a bit redundant. He wants to have it vacated or have a do-over. He has not moved on. Ted Cruz and everybody else seems to have. And Ted Cruz finds the whole kind of Donald Trump act kind of entertaining.
He is calling you a cheater. He's calling you a fraud. Does this cross the line for you?
Oh, listen, Donald's insults get more and more hysterical the more and more upset he gets.
Do you think they're funny?
I think they're very funny. I think I wake up every day and laugh at the latest thing Donald has tweeted because he's losing it.
See, that's where he could have gone into his Joe Pesci. How's he, or Donald Trump could go into his Joe Pesci. I mean, I guess he would have to go into his Ray Liotta about how is he funny? Is he funny like a clown?
Oh, like funny, haha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we should also note, again, both Rand Paul and Rick Santorum dropping out yesterday. Rick Santorum endorsing Marco Rubio.
And Rand Paul, I heard, was endorsing Ted Cruz, but I don't believe that to be true.
Well, there was no formal announcement that he was endorsing Ted Cruz, so I guess we'll have to wait to see. He's got a Senate reelection. I'd be surprised if he waded into this contest, at least at this stage. But here's how the news was broke to Ted Cruz about Santorum leaving the race and endorsing Rubio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's this?
This is Vinny.
Vinny, what happened?
Well,
Everything get straightened out?
No, we had a problem. I mean, we tried to do everything we could.
What do you mean?
Well, you know what I mean. He's gone. And we couldn't do nothing about it. That's it.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
He's gone. He's gone. That's it.
Yeah, so he's gone.
He's gone. That's it. Yeah.
All right, so how is all of this translating to campaigning, the retail campaigning going on in New Hampshire? For more on that, we're now joined by Pastor Rafael Cruz, the father and lead surrogate for Ted Cruz. Pastor Cruz, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Dan, great to be with you and Amy.
And I should mention your new book out again, Time for Action, which people will want to check out. So, some sniping back and forth as you're going to have in a heated political campaign as all the candidates, well, most of the candidates move from Iowa to New Hampshire. But how is Ted Cruz being received in New Hampshire, whereas the pundits keep pointing out he doesn't have that base of evangelical support like he had in Iowa?
Well, things are going very well in New Hampshire. He has more support than people give him credit for. You know, New Hampshire has a lot of libertarians. And actually now with Rand Paul concentrating on his Senate race, I think all of those libertarians are going to coalesce around Cruz because, Rand and my son work together on many issues on the Hill. Rand is a good, principled, constitutional, and so is my son. And so I think he will attract a lot of those libertarians and, all the Tea Parties, 40 different Tea Parties in New Hampshire, basically all agreed to support my son Ted. So we expect we're going to have a lot of support from the grassroots. Ted has a great ground game there. And so I think we're going to surprise some people.
So,
we're working hard, and Ted, of course, doesn't take anything for granted. He is doing a lot of retail stops every day in New Hampshire. He flew to New Hampshire the night right after the Iowa caucus and had his first event there the next morning.
So has your son spoken to Rand Paul, and is Rand Paul endorsing him or telling his constituents to support Ted?
I do not know. I have not talked to him about it. But they think alike. They have supported each other in a lot of issues, and it would be a welcome help. We respect Rand Paul very, very, very much. When Ted was running for Senate, both Rand and Ron endorsed Ted.
So what's your role in New Hampshire? What are you up to out there?
Well, I'm actually flying right now to South Carolina.
Oh, you're moving ahead. Yeah, okay.
My son is going to be in New Hampshire all week, but I'm going to be in South Carolina, and we're trying to split ourselves to where we can cover more territory. So.
All right. Well, we have to address the issue about Ted Cruz apologizing to Ben Carson for spreading rumors that he was dropping out. It seems to be an issue that isn't going away. Do you think the apology is enough, or do you think your son was trying to play dirty tricks to get some voters?
They were not dirty tricks at all. The thing that is disheartening is why doesn't the news concentrate on the real culprits? I mean, CNN was the one that put the innuendo that Carson was going to Florida, was not going to New Hampshire or South Carolina, and from Florida he was going to D.C. But CNN was the one that put that out, and as I understand, there were two other campaigns that also tried to say, well, if Carson is getting out, let's try to get those votes.
Yeah.
And yet the news are very silent about that.
Well, you know how the Washington press corps works. They want to hold politicians accountable, but they themselves are not accountable to anyone. So there's the disconnect, I would suggest. Now, in South Carolina, since you're jumping ahead and heading down there where Ted Cruz is in second place behind Trump at present, according to the Real Clear Politics polling average, Jeff Duncan, three-term congressman in South Carolina, endorsed Ted Cruz, essentially repeating the reason Ted Cruz has given as his value proposition, which is he's the consistent conservative that people can rely on. Are you going to be doing events with Duncan, or what's the schedule in South Carolina to make up the gap?
I'm not sure about my schedule. I know I'm going to be doing a pastor's conference early next week, and I will be crisscrossing the states. I have many friends in the state. I've spent a lot of time in South Carolina, and we feel very, very good about South Carolina.
Now, you're a pastor, as I've been referencing, and you're starting to hear from the left after Ted Cruz's victory in Iowa about the scary religious right, and that Ted Cruz supporters are the scariest of the scariest religious right. For people who are not particularly faith-based, and hear some of the demagoguery from the left in particular about Christians, what would you say to them about the infusion of religious language in our politics?
Well, what is scary about trying to follow the rule of law, about getting back to the Constitution and limited government, about protecting life, about protecting our moral fiber? I mean, there's nothing scary about that. That's the foundation of America. America was founded as a Judeo-Christian country. It's the only country in the world that was founded by men and women seeking the freedom to worship Almighty God. And as a matter of fact, pastors were at the forefront of the American Revolution. That's who we are. And, I think that, the moral foundation of America needs to be preserved. Otherwise, we're going to have chaos. The problem is that we have a new religion moving ahead in America, and that is secular humanism. And that is a religion that says that you're your own God. And if you're your own God, whatever you want to do is okay because there's nothing else. And that's what's happening.
Yeah, bingo. Yeah, you're preaching to the choir here, at least with me.
So, Pastor Rafael Cruz, why do you think that your son may rub some people the wrong way?
Well, because people that want to preserve the status quo, he threatens them. He has found a lot of people against him in Washington because he has called them out. He calls out what he calls the Washington cartel, the corrupt career politicians in both parties. And it is because of this corruption in Washington that a conservative that stands on principle stands out. And when you expose them, they don't like it. I speak very clearly in my book, A Time for Action, about this danger of secular humanism and the dangers of for example, you hear so much from this administration about freedom of worship. And people just don't understand that freedom of worship and freedom of religion are two entirely different things, and I explain that very clearly in my book. Worship is defined as what you do inside of a house of worship. Every communist country has freedom of worship. That means you keep your religion inside the four walls of the church. If you take it out to the marketplace, we're going to put you in jail. And that's really what we see more and more and more. We see a direct, outright attack on religion in America and on the freedom of the individual to worship God as he or she feels. And this is the real threatening thing. I mean, when you see, for example, Melissa Klein fined $135,000 for saying to someone who was a client of hers for years, I'm sorry, I cannot cater your same-sex marriage. It violates my religious beliefs. And she's slapped with a lawsuit when there were dozen bakers that they could have gone to. Or even worse, the case of Dick and Betty Odgaard. And I describe all of these cases in my book, A Time for Action. Dick and Betty Odgaard had a chapel for many years where they performed weddings and catered weddings and so on and so forth. A same-sex couple came demanding to be married, and they said, I'm sorry, we cannot do it. It violates our religious beliefs. Well, they got slapped with a lawsuit. They lost basically their chapel, their business, their ministry. But the ironic thing is that couple had already been married several months before. Oh. It wasn't about marriage. It was all about shutting down their business.
And position of views. That's right. Pastor Rafael Cruz, the father of Ted Cruz, surrogate, of course, for Ted Cruz's presidential campaign. Appreciate your remarks. The book is A Time for Action. Now, I'm a Ted Cruz supporter, but I got to say, if he wins New Hampshire, tell him he's got to keep the victory speech under 15 minutes. All right.
Well, I'll tell you, there was so much energy in that room. I mean, that whole ballroom was packed. I mean, there were people standing against the walls, and I guess it was just so much euphoria. But you know something, Dan? When I was standing there, I couldn't contain the tears from my eyes, you know, because I think back. 58 years before, I came to this country with nothing, couldn't even speak the language. To see my son now as a U.S. Senator and potentially being the next President of the United States of America, all that comes to my mind is only in America.
Yeah.
Only in America. Where else can that happen in one generation?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a great story, and regardless of what happens in this presidential campaign, congratulations on your family's success as well as your personal success. Pastor Rafael Cruz, the author of A Time for Action, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Dan and Amy, it's so great to be with you. God bless you. God bless each and every one of your listeners.
Thank you. Thanks. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.